Welcome and thanks for joining us. My guest today is Chris Moss. He is the Chief Technology Officer at Poly. Chris, good to have you with us.
Tom, thanks for having me. Really glad to be here.
And we know to a pretty detailed degree what happened to the federal workforce in the pandemic. Now we're coming out of it to some degree, and this is all far from totally resolved yet. But what's your sense of how work may have shifted for good? Once some people go back, some people won't. What does it look like to you at this point for the workforce?
Yeah, Tom, it's been an interesting year and a half, obviously, and a lot of that has to do with the shift in workforce to remote. Prior to the pandemic, we think the population was around 300 million users, and we saw that spike to over a billion, right, including all the government organizations and agencies that had to kind of flip the switch back in February and March. Right, had to get over the limited infrastructure, some of the complex processes around, having remote workers, and of course the significant security concerns that all of these organizations have. That being said, the transition was made, right, and we've seen users being productive through the last year as they start to head back into the office, and we think that population will level off somewhere around 600 million, almost doubling, if you will, to pre-pandemic numbers. And we don't think it's going to be elastic, right? Some things will be elastic, like per se travel, where, management may want to keep expenses down on travel, but users want to go back to business travel and connecting. But this remote work piece will stay in place. And so the future of work is definitely going to be a hybrid model. Absolutely.
Sure. And to some extent, the economics of all of this have changed too. The idea of telework, agencies have really spent a lot of time trying to refine the technology for telework, and therefore the economics have shifted for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, the industry and the economics around how organizations are making decisions around communications platforms have significantly changed, right? We saw all collaboration or communication platforms grow early last year. Microsoft with Skype and Skype to Teams transitions. Zoom became sort of a household name and really had acceleration there. Even a lot of on-premise platforms grew. It also has led many organizations to use more than one. I think in the past, people kind of settled on one platform. Now they're using more than one. Like 80% plus are using two or more. Even 20% are using five or more. So there's a lot of different needs within the organizations. The other piece around, sort of economics is the use of video. And so as we look to return back to the office, adding video to many of their workspaces to make sure that they can connect back to these remote workforces. In fact, almost a third of customers that we talk to now are looking to put video in every workspace inside their businesses, right? So very, very big opportunity there for users to stay productive. And then lastly, the last piece around economics is real estate. People are re-looking at their campuses and their offices. Some are looking for savings, obviously, but others are looking to redesign offices, right? To give users the ability to do something that they can't do from home when they go into the office, or building local community hubs to shorten commutes. So, lots of changes from a dynamics perspective around the platforms.
And getting back to that idea of video, and everyone seems to be on video in some way or shape or form nowadays, but there are still pretty serious drawbacks to the way it operates, especially in a professional environment. What are some of the drawbacks that people need to think about as they institutionalize this idea of video in the office and not in the office?
Sure. Yeah. I think in general, when we all started working remotely, we saw a bump in productivity. Instead of spending hours commuting, right? In fact, one of the biggest benefits of working remotely is not having a commute. And what we initially saw is just a massive demand for desktop video because knowledge workers found that it's how they stay connected and productive. And with that, they wanted, really nice headsets. They wanted really nice video technology so they can look really awesome like broadcasters like yourself. So that was really the transition behind us. But over time, right, people started to miss that face-to-face interaction, right, and became less connected. And now for those exact reasons, the pendulum's kind of swung, and people want the ability now to be able to go into the office and reconnect socially with folks, right? So again, it's really a balance of providing that flexibility, but also giving people the opportunity to reconnect back in office spaces and a physical environment. So it's really going to be a hybrid model moving forward.
Right. And so, therefore, you have to have some level of equality between the experience of people that are in the office that are, we've read a lot about this, that might have some kind of an advantage in access to the boss or in being seen for being productive and great versus those that are only tuning in this manner, video remote all the time. And so, is there a technological way, do you think, to maybe close that gap so that remote people aren't out there in the cold, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean that is a massive theme within organizations right now, right? How do we make it equitable for users for whatever reasons, whether it's health or just their work status, that they're going to be remote, while others, right, may be coming in for a team meeting. So how do we create that equality? And quite honestly, people are looking for technology to help in creating that equivalence. Um, and so here at Poly, we're committed to providing the best experience. Poly sits in a pretty unique spot as far as these virtual platforms, right, with software and meetings and calling solutions. Our devices are really where the physical components come back in, right, where the audio and video fidelity come back in. So we put a lot of AI and machine learning around our audio and video elements, right, to make sure that we keep noise out of the meeting, right, so that we don't distract people who are remote. We also use a lot of AI techniques to frame users within group settings, right, to make sure that people can participate as well as possible, even when they're remote.
Yeah, and let's back up for just a moment. This idea of the equitable, holistic, secure approach to remote work. Maybe just we should probably define that a little bit more carefully so people understand, and then we'll get so people understand that, and then we'll get a little bit more into the technology.
Yeah, the overall strategy here is a hybrid strategy, and in a way, in the good old days, I mean, 14 months ago, things were easier for work and campus, and most of it happened on a campus, right? It was very disciplined around an office space, and being able to keep things very secure and tight. But now, right, we see the need for remote work to really make us disruption proof in this next normal, and that's where these hybrid work strategies come in. And so in the past, right, in the good old days, HR, IT, and real estate were somewhat loosely coupled, but now are much more intertwined, right? Because a user living in these hybrid worlds has the ability to work from home, or they can go in the office, and it's not just sort of part-time, right? It's truly hybrid model that gives them this flexibility. So here at Poly, one of the ways that we help organizations move through that is we start with the actual user. And so in our past, as Plantronics and Polycom came together to form Poly, Plantronics had done a lot of research on personas and how people actually work and how we track people through their daily lives and what the pain points are and what their preferences are. And we pull that into a set of persona research, and we just recommissioned that right before the pandemic. So it's very valuable data. We've also extended it now to how people like to work in spaces, right, where they like to spend their time. And so that really helps us define that hybrid model for the users, right? So that equality model that you're talking about is really to sit on top of this hybrid strategy of people working in the office and quite honestly, people working from anywhere. And so the need for better technology, better devices, and the need for analytics and management have also gone to the front of the line from a priorities perspective.
In many ways, it sounds like the best approach then, based on the research you're repeating and are about to do again, is a human-centered design or user experience standpoint, as opposed to people adjusting themselves to whatever technology base is in place. Fair?
That's right. I mean, look, collaboration at the end of the day, there's only really one ruler, and it's experience, and it is user based, right? So starting with the user is definitely the right place for these strategies.
All right. And you mentioned analytics too, as kind of a management console to to look at this? Are there metrics that management can look at to understand whether they are providing the type of workplace and work equity and holistic experience that we've been discussing?
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest pain points, especially early last year, was managing these remote populations. Again, we had that flip the switch moment. All these users were now outside of the office, right? So we had to, build the services to connect back to those folks. But training and adoption, right? So we gave them technology, we gave them access. Are they using it? Are they on the latest version of firmware, making sure that they're secure? If they're not using it, then what adoption and training programs can we enlist them in to get them productive, right? So on the personal side of things, very invaluable. Now, as we see more and more organizations returning to the office, space becomes, an investment, right? What am I doing to remediate against the sort of COVID, the new world, right? How do I create touchless experiences when I walk into meetings? How do I count the number of people in spaces? How do I know when a space was used so that I can send the maintenance crew in to clean the place up, right? So, insights, analytics, workplace analytics, all these things are going to be much more measured and much more of a key performance indicator, right, for businesses moving forward.
My guest today is Chris Moss, the Chief Technology Officer at Poly. I'm Tom Temin. This discussion is a holistic, secure, and equitable approach to remote work, sponsored by Poly here on Federal News Network.